Okay, but I have to speak so that we can see if the translation works. Is it there? Italian is there? L'italiano funziona? Okay. Le français? Okay. Very good. So, Eminence, Highness, Excellencies, Your Grace, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, the panel that is gathering us this afternoon is dedicated to one particular country, Nigeria. So welcome to all of you and thank you for your interest in this topic. In a world with so many ongoing conflicts and wars, why dedicate during this conference, Peace is the Future, a particular panel to this theme? Of course, first of all, because we have very eminent participants in this peace meeting coming from this important country. And I'm happy to welcome our panelists. His Royal Highness Mohammed Sambo Haruna, on my left-hand side. He's the Emir of Wase in Plateau. His Grace Ignatius Kaigama, Archbishop of Jos and President of the Nigerian Bishops' Conference. Then we have one of the major European, and I would say world experts of Nigeria, Professor Marc-Antoine Pérouse de Monclos. Then we have Imam Mohamed Ashafa and Pastor James Rouye. They are known very much also in Antwerp as the Imam and the Pastor, both from Kaduna. Welcome to all of you, and a particular welcome to His Eminence, Cardinal Onayekan, who is the Archbishop of Abuja, who honors us with his presence today, and who will follow us from the floor. But there is a second reason why it is right to have a particular program on Nigeria within the wider context of this conference. Nigeria is an important country in the West African region. I would say in the whole of Africa. Nigeria is often referred to as Africa's giant, and in many senses it is. I would just like to recall that this country is Africa's most populated country, with more than 170 million inhabitants, even if nobody really knows the real figure. That's a huge number. One out of every 5 people living in sub-Saharan Africa is a Nigerian. 1 out of every 5. Nigeria's GDP this year surpassed that of South Africa, becoming the top economy of Africa, even if some questions are raised about how this GDP is calculated, and even if the Nigerian economy heavily depends on its oil resources. And I would also like to mention the many Nigerians living overseas, from the UK to Atlanta, China, even in this country and this city, shaping an interesting and sometimes effective network. Moreover, Nigeria, a country filled with churches and mosques, or mosques as a Nigerian would say, has a reputation for being one of the most religious countries, with atheists making up less than 1% of the population. Yet this thriving and developing Nigeria is passing through a very troublesome and violent phase of its history. In the northeast, the extremist group Boko Haram, which turned violent and reckless after the unlawful assassination of its founder, Mohammed Yusuf, in July 2009, is terrorizing the population, and has conducted suicide attacks causing loss of human life and destruction in many parts of the country, including the capital Abuja. The group, set on the creation of an Islamic State, targets from time to time Christian churches, but not only. It also is responsible for a lot of casualties among Muslims. This has been an ongoing story, but it was only the abduction of almost 300 schoolgirls in the remote town of Chibok in April of this year that received worldwide attention. Meanwhile, Boko Haram has developed from a local group with a local agenda into a cross-border phenomenon, destabilizing parts of northern Cameroon, Niger, and the region of Lake Chad, and probably linking up with other terrorists and jihadist groups in northern Africa and beyond. In recent years, we have seen a growing destabilization of that part of Africa. I would say roughly between the 10th and the 20th degree parallel north latitude, from west to east, from Mali, Niger, across northern Nigeria, northern Cameroon, Chad, South Sudan, to Somalia and even Kenya, and more to the south we have the crisis in the Central African Republic. And this destabilization has increased after many weapons were flown in from Libya after the destitution of the regime of Muammar Gaddafi. In this regional hotspot, the position and stability of Nigeria, which also has the most powerful army in the region, is pivotal, is crucial. And of course, when we speak about Nigeria and the tunnel of violence, we should not only look at Boko Haram, but also at the many violent clashes which often occur among different ethnic groups, especially between Fulani herdsmen and local farmers in the state of Plateau and Kaduna. But not only there. This is often seen as a conflict between Muslims and Christians, but the reality on the ground is far more complex. What will be the future of Nigeria? How can the exit out of the tunnel of violence be found? That's the question we want to put today. How can peace and justice be restored? Before giving the floor to our panelists, who have more expertise than I do, I want to say something personal about Nigeria. Especially, and now I will talk to the non-Nigerians in this hall. In the Western media, Nigeria is often referred to negatively. It is seen as the home of many evil things: terrorism, violence, corruption, fraud, crime, and so on. And this might be true to some extent, but it is still a very partial vision. Having visited myself Nigeria many times, I've also learned to appreciate and to love an interesting nation with many young, dynamic, friendly, creative people, often living well together among people with different ethnic backgrounds, Muslims and Christians alike, often struggling in daily life, but also preparing a better future for themselves and their country. This is also the goal of the many young men and women who are committed with Sant'Egidio in that country to build a better Nigeria. And for me, Nigeria is also an interesting laboratory on how, in this era of globalization, a better future for the whole of Africa can be found. After this too long an introduction, I'm now happy to give the floor to, we will start with His Grace, Ignatius Kaigama, who is the Archbishop of Jos, President of the Nigerian Bishops' Conference. He's also a networker, a worker on interfaith dialogue. He's the winner of the Italian Peace Prize Colomba d'Oro in 2012. So, Your Grace, I'm happy to give you the floor for about 10 minutes.
Thank you.